Introducing Recorded Content, a podcast for small, scrappy B2B marketing teams who want to get the most out of podcasting. In each episode, we capture stories from industry experts and podcasters. Listen in and uncover what it takes to launch, run, and grow a successful B2B podcast. Check out and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. Let's jump in.
Hey, this is Justin Brown. I'm the co-founder of Motion and your host for this episode of Recorded Content. Recorded Content is brought to you by Motion, a done-for-you podcast agency for small, scrappy B2B tech marketers. B2B companies want to use YouTube and know it's important, whether it's for video content or podcasts. B2B companies want to have a YouTube channel that works within their marketing efforts, but the problem is that creating a good YouTube channel takes a lot of work, and most people don't know where to start, where to invest their time and energy. So in today's episode, you'll hear from Matteo Duò, the head of content at Kinsta. A year and a half ago, Kinsta didn't have a YouTube channel, and today they have nearly 6,000 subscribers. They've done this through dedicated efforts of consistent content creation, YouTube SEO, social media distribution, and some good old-fashioned backlink work. This episode is chock full of juicy nuggets, and I think you'll enjoy it. Let's get started. I think companies know that they should be on YouTube, but struggle to either start or to stay consistent with it. And before we get into how you're managing your channel, I actually want to just talk through how the idea of getting on YouTube started. You and I were just talking, actually. So it sounds like about a year and a half ago in 2020, you all decided this was going to be a big focus, and there's been a lot of growth on your YouTube channel since then, and we'll get into that. But where I want to just start is, why did Kinsta decide to invest so much time and energy into YouTube?
Okay, thanks for the question, Justin. So let me just provide you, some perspective, some context to it. At Kinsta, we've always kind of worked toward a common goal, between departments, between team. And this is like providing a match customer experience. And customer experience is a combination of three elements. You have the product, like tech stack, in our case, security, product features, and all of that. Then you have support, and then you have content, So, which I'm here, of course, using in the broadest sense possible, because we're talking about written content, video, and also podcast, And and this is something, that it's really, really interesting to dig deep into. So all these areas, that I just said are always kind of front of mind at Kinsta. Me as head of content, I'm on a daily quest, let's say, which is how can I make sure we're always delivering on the right type of content to the right audience to make their life easier when using our product, right? So the point is that we were strong when it came to writing tutorials, blog posts, documentation. So all in all, like, our written content was really strong. And by always trying to focusing on publishing more and more frequent, top-notch written content, we said, okay, how do people find out about these written content? First answer is they Google it, They have pain points, they have questions they need answer to, so they Google it. And right now, like in 2022, but this was also true like a couple of years ago, the way users, hence your potential customers, are looking for answers got richer. Because on top of Google, they also start looking into other places, one of which, of course, is YouTube. YouTube is truly the second biggest search engines, And that's why YouTube kind of became a focus for us. There are millions of people that every day search for answers, tips, information, anything on YouTube. Maybe not exclusively on YouTube, but also that's the case, but also like as an additional way for them on top of Google answers, on top of the answer that they find on Google. That rang a bell when we launched our Kinsta YouTube channel at the end of 2020. So we saw a huge opportunity, a huge untapped opportunity for us there. We just needed to incorporate this new format, the new video format, into our content strategy. And that's what we did. We launched, as I was saying, our YouTube channel in November 2020 with almost no subscribers. In a little more than a year and a half, we grew it to more than 5,600 subscribers I still remember how nervous I was the moment when we started publishing the very first few videos on it. Oh my, Justin. It was really nerve-wracking on one side, but also I remember how thrilled I was, knowing all the work that we had put in, previous month had finally, become like morph into actual videos, attracting this new potential customer and also helping our current customers find their answers. So like the most challenging aspect was translating our approach and make it more richer, in our content strategy, which now has video, written, and audio, for also our podcast. But I believe we were talking about this in a few moments, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to talk about how it has evolved. I went back and looked at the very first video, which I think was under a minute long, which was enabling two-factor authentication. And now there are playlists and different categories. Can you talk a little bit about how the channel has evolved over the last, it's less than 1.5 years?
Yeah, it's a little less, yes. So our YouTube channel is a crucial component of our content strategy, as a whole. And each type of video we put live has its own role. Since one of our main goals as a company, as specifically content team, is to provide helpful content, the vast majority of video content we produce gravitates around, providing tips, how to fix issues with this plugin or with that platform or with that browser, and how to use our product. That's, for example, is one video idea that came up based on your comment, like how to use two-factor authentication. These are like to the point, straight solution provided, right in front of you as a user to use to take advantage of one of our features, So yeah, we have like videos that go through, I don't know, listicles, like option for you to use for a use case, or we have tutorials about our product, our features, but also we have promotional videos. This is something we started doing after a while, after we started noticing some traction on our YouTube channel. When we have promotional videos, you could think about them like, I don't know, we've just launched a new feature on our site, on our, hosting platform. And we needed an additional way to promote it around, to gather more eyes, around it. And these videos are also like, these promotional videos are not just primarily focused on YouTube, even though they live there, but they're also being featured on our landing pages, our automated email sequences for onboarding new clients or for prospect clients. But sometimes I also know that they're used by sales, in their sales chat. They could take advantage of this sort of video asset to kind of show you what they're talking about. And this provides them with a much stronger, approach when, discussing with prospect. But also, if we're turning back into tutorials, it's something that also our support team could use when it comes to actually showing our own customers how to get that fixed. And of course, on our YouTube channel, we publish the Kinsta podcast, reverse engineer, where listeners and viewers learn more about the win, losses, and lessons, with people, entrepreneurs from, within the tech industry, from companies like Google, Databox, Pentagram, and more. So our YouTube channel really evolved from, don't get me wrong, but we started really with a leap of faith. There's always like a mix and match, meaning that there are plenty of unknowns and some other assumption that you're going to see whether you were right or wrong in the beginning, and then you adapt and reiterate on that, right? So we started with having this new additional channel as this new additional content type within our content strategy for the untapped opportunity we saw. And then we iterate in new different video types based on the different persona or the different, needs that we notice based on the data that we have.
And so when you set out, I'm curious what the thought process was there. So if you go to the channel right now, and what you're talking about basically is you have different categories or playlists for different potential people who would be coming to the Kinsta channel to consume content for a variety of reasons, whether that is, you have the agency testimonial videos, you have the tutorial videos, you then have the podcast. So those are content that are going to be consumed by different folks in different situations. When you set out to start the channel, how narrow did you start with the content? Was it that you said, all right, we're going to set out, the first thing that we're going to do is tutorial videos, and then we're going to bolt something on? Did you have ideas of what you were going to bolt on? So I guess my question is when you started, how did the categories of content get built into the channel?
That's a great question. We didn't start by knowing upfront what type of categories or playlists, we can call them whatever, but like group of thematically relevant videos we were going to produce. But we started from the data that we had by looking at the traffic that most of our articles were able to generate. The question that we got asked over and over in support, the question or kind of sales pitch that sales chat we're able to deliver to prospect. By combining all of this with some of data, like our set in stone data that we have, like in our analytics and stuff, we then decided to start launching what we thought would be the biggest type of content that could have the biggest impact for us based on the resources and the time and the goals that we set when we started. As you can imagine, we were, as part of the content team and as head of content, my main goal was, of course, trying to enter this new world for us as a company, and for me primarily, because I had no experience, running and launching YouTube channels. The idea was going there and kind of really make, it's not a difference, but a huge impact for us in the company and for the content, anything that could be content related when it comes to Kinsta. This means that it was an easy choice in the beginning to say, okay, let's try to simply adapt our approach to always delivering these valuable tips, these tutorials, and try to adapt them to this new format. And then from there, based on additional data that we started gathering and new experience that we had grown internally, then we decided to say, okay, the next thing that we're going to go with is the podcast. And then the other thing is tips, podcasts, and tutorials. And then tips, tutorial, and all of that. So we're kind of increasing the type of different content types that we are able to produce and maintain regularly without affecting the quality of it. So it's like an incremental steps that went into the process.
Incremental, a lot of steps taken in a short period of time, though. That's why I asked that question. It's so fascinating to see where you started and you didn't have any real YouTube experience, and
not at all,
a year and a half later where you are now. I mean, there's a lot of things that you said that I would love to call out, which is one, really no YouTube experience, or maybe very little like the normal person would have. Two is the fact that, what did you look at, right? You looked at the data of what's working and what people are looking into. So create content around that, create content that helps. And here we are, 6,000 subscribers later. It's just a fascinating story. And one of the things that I want to dive into is, in your role, what that looks like to manage. You're publishing a lot and going from publishing, mainly written content, which has a much lower barrier to entry, in that you can pull up a Google Doc and write. Doesn't mean that it's going to be good, but it's a lot easier to produce, to actually producing and managing this YouTube channel that has all of this video. So what goes into the maintenance and handling of the channel itself?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So the content, the content team is the one kind of responsible It's not kind of, it's mainly responsible for our YouTube channel, you know? This entails we're taking care of plenty of tasks, like gazillions, some of which are define the strategy, refine it, its implementation, because once you have strategy on paper, then you also need to follow up and implement it, you know, make it real in a sense. And one thing that is missing about the strategy, or people that forget about it, is that also redefining and approaching things with an iteration-driven type of approach to work, meaning that once you set the strategy and you've implemented, that doesn't mean that the work is done. It's always a matter of improving it, try to remove barriers, try to decrease the number of friction and come up with new ideas, and maybe someone gets sick, or maybe something, you know, is broken right before you were about to hit your, 100 published videos. So you always need to be aware that things happen, and that your strategy should kind of help you make the right decision when things happen. Another thing is research and provide topic ideas for videos. Of course, this is true for videos, for articles, for podcasts, anything like research and providing topic ideas. So topic ideation. And then one thing that some of the people kind of neglect is decide which angle each video, or, you know, in a podcast terminology, like what type of angle each video or podcast episode or article would need to feature. Think of this. Everyone could talk about launching a podcast, okay? But what's the perspective from which you can create a video that might resonate the most with the audience you're trying to attract? Like, this is one unique difference. This is one unique trait that you have and you should be developing. And then the hard work is finding, define it, and implementing it. Other thing also you need to be taking care when running a YouTube channel is collecting all design assets that might be required, like logo, brand guidelines, lower thirds, on-screen typography, and all of that. And of course, one thing is about planning and defining your production and what I call production engines. Like how are you going to create videos? Do you have in-house expertise, resources? Do you have the right tools at hand? Maybe you need to buy new license. Maybe you need to delegate. Maybe you need to hire new freelancers. I don't know. And then one thing that it's kind of, I've said it at last, but it's really important, is plan a publishing schedule and make sure to stick to it. I know this might sound like a little bit too advanced, like for someone, like something that you could worry about even after you've launched the YouTube video, you know, especially for those who hasn't started yet. But even before having your first video up or your podcast episode, you should make a decision on how frequently you would like to publish new videos. Even if it's just a matter of picking a schedule, you know, arbitrarily, almost out of the blue, even with no data backing it up. It's important because this will delineate what you need to get there. Like, let's say you'd like to publish 5 videos per week, 3 videos, whatever, or 2 podcast episodes, whatever. You come up with your own publishing schedule. Do you have resources to do with that? Will your in-house team be able to stick to it? If not, it means you'll need to start finding alternative option and reconsider your first idea. Is this maybe a bit too much? Should I lower the number of videos or episodes? Should I increase the budget for this project? Should I look for freelance videos or, you know, additional editors that I could bring into this project? Will I be able to sustain this video production? Will I be able to sustain this video production, you know, when it comes to, for example, creating all the design asset we'll need for our videos? Mm-hmm. So setting a publishing schedule you need to stick to, it's kind of your way to assess whether your video production plans or, you know, more generally your future plans fit within your workload. If yes, that's awesome. You've made a great call right from the beginning. If not, you'll need to reevaluate all pieces here involved along with your goals.
Yeah, I love that. And it's something that I talk to folks about a lot, which is just, you know, being able to stay consistent in what it is that you're doing. And I think it's both for the audience, sure, you know, but at the same time, out of your 5,600 subscribers, I don't know if they have picked up on necessarily what your publishing schedule is, but you hold yourself accountable to that. And they know if they, check it out every X amount of time, there's going to be new content there. And I think that's a fascinating point that you made, where you're almost evaluating yourself as well. What can we do? And maybe if we can't hit that, that's okay. Let's reevaluate. Maybe we need to go outside. Maybe we need to outside of our firm. Maybe we just need to cut back and then stay consistent on what we cut back to.
Right.
So I really appreciate that insight.
If I may, just because people keep hearing around or keep reading around the importance of consistency. This is something that, based on my previous experience growing blogs, traffic to YouTube channels, and also traffic to our podcast. Consistency, to me, it's the currency for growth. Meaning, you can't have growth, sustainable growth, or ongoing growth without being consistent. Regardless whether that consistency is publishing one video per week, one episode per week, one episode per month, one video per month. But you have to nail down your future path so that you understand whether you're able to stick with it and have the resources to, kind of grow on that. And you just need to create content so that so that your chances to have your content before someone's eyes are higher.
And you've used that consistency currency to basically buy, if you will, but not with real currency, 5,600 subscribers, which in B2B is a ton in the amount of time that you've gone. I mean, when I see even a company that's been doing YouTube for 3, 4, 5 years, and if they have 1,000 subscribers, it's pretty significant. We're not Logan Paul or whomever out there who's going to get millions of subscribers. A lot of B2B organizations are selling complex solutions where, if you had 1,000 people buy from you, that would make your company a very large organization. So I'm curious of what the growth has looked like over the last, less than 2 years. What has your growth on YouTube looked like from day one to now?
The main thing about how we were able to grow our YouTube channel, it's a combination of things. There's never like a silver bullet. Like there's no like single recipe that I can share and honestly share and say, okay, if you follow A, B, and C, your channel will grow. But there are criteria that you need to have. Otherwise, I'm sure your YouTube channel or your podcast or your blog won't generate any traffic or little to none traffic. Consistency, as I was saying, is kind of the frame within your production schedule should work in. If you're not consistent, it's really hard for you to compete with all the other companies, amateurs, freelancers, anyone in the world that are creating content in the same market niche. The second one is making sure that you have really streamlined as much as you can your production. This entails, making sure that you're already kind of lined up the required step to have that piece of content, specifically in our case, the video content, ready. This also supports being consistent. I know, but it's a different aspect. It's a different angle. Like if you're not able to create a content machine, it will be really, really, really hard to have growth within your news outlet, podcast, or YouTube channel. Of course, there's also like a huge part of the growth. It's about, promoting videos and, trying to collect as many eyes and people attention, the more at best. So there are a few aspects. Of course, it's a mixed approach. But when it came to Kinsta, we kind of dabbled down on YouTube SEO. Like we do thorough research on keyword opportunities, competitor analysis of video. Maybe competitors are already producing video assets that are ranking for topics or, question that we're planning to produce videos for. And then we see what we can produce that's better, And then we optimize video description. In YouTube, you have that huge space right below, the title. You have like a huge kind of editor, and you can really go crazy when it comes to optimizing with the description and also making like more skimmable, meaning that you can use chapters, you can use resource links that maybe you've been mentioning in the video. And then we also went really all in, would say, in embedding our videos. So from the YouTube channel, we embed videos in some of our most visited blog posts or pages where we cover kind of the same topic, or where at least one section on that page talks about the same thing that we have in the video. This provides us with more opportunities to also make readers aware that we have a YouTube channel with plenty of videos that they might be interested in, And then we promote our videos on our social channels. Of course, we promote our videos, of course, on all our social channels. For every video we create, we have several clips uploaded, natively to those platforms. Some with copy and the link back to the video. We have LinkedIn sliders, tweets with short video clips, or tweets with link to YouTube, nice images, to support the video and all of that. Our approach is create once, repurpose almost endlessly. At Kinsta also, we also run weekly newsletter with thousands of subscribers with whom we share our recent content pieces and the latest articles. And guess what? Latest videos and the latest podcast episode. So this is a combination of things, of course. And this all combined, I'm not able to tell you like having a video featured in our newsletter brought us X amount of new subscriber, because we have this sort of data, but it's kind of internal one, right?
Yeah.
But it's a combination of all of this. And one thing that businesses or companies, sometimes forget about, it's that if they start producing content, and here again, I'm using content in the widest scope possible, so written, audio, and video, is that regardless of how much content they produce, it's a content library that they have, and it's a content library that they could use and promote around when it comes to, answering others people's question on forums, on social media threads, on Twitter threads, on LinkedIn. You can provide answers, and then boom, you add the link back to your YouTube video, your article, your podcast episode. Of course, you have to be a little bit cautious on that, because if you do this like at scale and in a almost automated way, you're going to flag as a spammer. You're going to be flagged as a spammer, but there's a good way to do things, which is proactively and trying to answer that question and say, hey, by the way, if you want to have an in-depth view on that topic, we also have this article.
Okay. And I am going to ask you one thing though, which is not all content is created equal, in that some things do perform better than others. And I was going through your different video content that you have on the channel. And one that stood out to me is, well, as I was going through the podcast itself, was the introductory video to the podcast, which has 45,000 views, which I don't know if is that your most visited one?
For the podcast related videos, yes.
Okay. So let's dig into that a little bit. And I'm just curious as to how that happened. Look, announcements in anything usually do pretty well. If I announce something new on LinkedIn, it'll perform well because people are always interested in new. But just talk to me about what you did to promote the Reverse Engineered podcast and what led to 45,000 views on that trailer video.
Okay, let me see what I can share without, sharing
Giving
all
up your
the
secret
script,
sauce.
right?
Yeah.
No, of course I'm kidding. Honestly, I could say that really the mix that I just, share with you, like having a really differentiated and rich way to promote all the content that we have. There are moments or there are initiatives like the podcast, when we launched the podcast and we were so excited to have it finally, because it would be like the Kinsta podcast was the kind of missing piece within the content puzzle, the content machine that, kind of how we envision the content machine at Kinsta. So once we had it, all the content mix, all the promotional tactics that are part of our mix, we simply 10x on them, meaning we start looking into other website that talks about podcasts and where they mention, podcasts about business and, the topics that we cover in Reverse Engineer about, business journeys and entrepreneurial, path and all of that. And we reach out to them. We started building with them some sort of relationship. And at the end of the day, they end up, featuring a link to our trailer. You do this at scale, you have a gazillion links or mention. And that's why our trailer, on top of the fact that it's really cool, if you ask me, I know I'm not, I don't know. This is super subjective, I know, but it's really to the point. It explained what we talked about. It's really produced super professionally. And it was easy to say, hey, you're talking about podcasts. We have a podcast. We're building a relationship. Why don't you just simply check it out? And if you like it, we would appreciate, of course, if you could feature it. This might sound simple. This might sound like I'm saying you something that is not true, but this is 100% true.
I mean, marketing fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
Going around and asking for backlinks. And then on top of it, you provide video content for people to be able to point to.
Yeah.
And there you go. Just a couple of other questions before I let you go today. Something I'm curious about, I know you've talked about the importance of consistency. And I know, at least with myself, consistency is something that I care a lot about. We run a weekly podcast. It is like, almost religion for us to be putting out a podcast every week, and I will feel like I let myself and my company down if that doesn't happen. And a lot of times I care more about the fact that we're publishing than I care about whether or not it gets a certain number of views or downloads or what have you. So I'm curious from your perspective, what do you classify as whether or not a video or a piece of content is successful?
It depends on where you're starting from and through which lenses are you looking at. There are two sides of the story here. One is from a company perspective, and the other one is from the public facing type of point of view. So from a company perspective, I feel I completely relate to what you just said about I'm really committed to publishing. Like, to me, content machine needs to be built, and once it's built, it just needs to go. I need, like, if there are emergency, they all come after making sure that we have video going out or article going out when we need them to go out. So rigidly sticking to our, publishing schedule for video, written content, and podcast episode for sure. This is one thing that internally I could take into account when it comes to saying whether something was successful or no. If we met the deadline, if we were able to keep up with consistency, to me, it's a plus. Mm-hmm. Then it is like, after 1 month, 2 months of work, are we able to improve our outcome? Meaning, are we able to streamline even further our processes involved into producing that piece of video, that piece of content? If the answer is yes, then it means that we need to, again, kind of circle back to the beginning and adapt even further our strategy and our implementation strategy. And the outcome will be the same, but it will take less from us, resource-wise, time-wise. This is a huge plus for me as well. Then there are from the other point of view, like the public-facing one, the numbers, the number of views, the number of inbound links that we might generate for YouTube videos or mention in other channels that talk about our videos. The number of the trend of the subscriber that decide to subscribe to our channel, how steep does that look? This is something that also we're looking at when it comes to assessing whether a video or overall the channel is successful. Another thing is by checking how many of those videos, for example, the promotional one, brought back visitors to our own website. That is also another thing. And another thing, if you really want to go into details, it could be like the ratio between the subscriber, the visitors, the viewers, and the number of transactions that might have generated, or there are part of, the customer journey. The more we get data to kind of interpret our own numbers, the more we will be able to say, okay, this type of video seems like the one that's really, really working great for us. So let's do 10 times that without, simply, reiterating on the same very thing. These are a few things. Of course, success has different shapes and form and comes in different shapes and form. And every business have their own, of course. The thing is that when it comes, for example, to podcasts, which again, it was a new channel, a new format for me primarily, but also for Kinsta, is that what we look at when it comes to saying that our episode were successful. It's a combination of things. Again, it's quantitative data, so data that we have access to, for example, number of downloads, number of views, time, that listener have been on a podcast episode, or viewers, how long far, they went to engage with our video content. Then what's the number of visitors and readers that podcast page on our website were able to generate. On top of this, we also have some sort of qualitative data, which is actually the feedback that we hear. There have been sales chat with prospects saying, "Hey, I'm checking with you because I heard you in one of your reverse engineer podcast episodes. I wanted to know more about this." And support. Again, it could be the case that, "Hey, I've noticed this video." They reach out to us, even though they're not our customers, and then support forward their question back to the content team. This is another way that, to me, tells me that content, did this work, did this job, because it brought us back people that in the beginning we weren't, like, those people didn't even know that we even existed sometimes.
It's fascinating because it's exactly what I try to talk about a lot, which is you see the success metrics across a lot of different channels and ways, and some of it is word of mouth and other of it is viewers or downloads, and I can't, track that back to any certain person. But at the same time, it's working, but it can be hard when, for me, I'm lucky enough to be the co-founder of a business. And so, between myself and my business partner and co-host for this show, Tristan, we have the flexibility to do what we want without having to check with a board or CEOs or things like that.
Right.
But a lot of businesses don't have that flexibility, and they do get asked, what's going to be the ROI of this podcast? So it is really good for people to hear, other than just from me, that, hey, you should just do it because it works. All of the different ways that people are seeing, success metrics in podcasting, and that it isn't linear. It isn't just, hey, if you do this number of episodes, you'll see this return. Every business is different. The way that people use podcasts are different. And it's why I wanted to have you on today. You're successfully using the podcast on YouTube, which I think a lot of folks aren't able to do. So hopefully this can provide one or two tips for them if it is something that they want to embark on. And that's actually my last question. So my last question for you today was going to be, what would you say to someone who is thinking about starting a YouTube channel or investing more heavily in a YouTube channel as a B2B tech company?
It could be an open-ended question, but I'll try to, of course, come down to some actionable tips based, of course, off of my experience. So, as we were saying, like, we launched Reverse Engineer in April 2021, and on that day, we made 3 episodes available. And then we kept up with a bi-weekly publishing schedule, like 2 episodes per month, right? The goal we set with Kinsta, with the Kinsta podcast, was primarily, and this is interesting to me, is primarily to explore more and new opportunities and reach audiences we don't regularly engage with. Usually we talk about WordPress, we talk about tech tips, we talk about tutorials, we talk about hosting. Reverse engineer, it's never doesn't talk about hosting. We talk with subject matter experts, successful entrepreneurs, and business people about their journey, what they did, what they failed at, what lesson they learned, and what kind of made them who they are today. We changed the angle through the podcast. That was the huge opportunity, because this is a much greater one that resonates with more people. It's business stories, especially business stories in the tech world. So if you think podcast, or if you're thinking about launching your own podcast, the first thing is you think about audio. But that's not 100% true, as more and more businesses and podcast producers are also turning into video format, as you were saying, Justin, just for their own podcast. So let me share this. If you're obsessed like me with optimizing your output and you would like to launch a podcast, having it also in video is a great option. I'll explain why. You're investing your time, resources, and experience to produce a podcast, right? You set time aside for recording it and anything that's required to have it finalized. So why not making it, available also on YouTube to make the best use of your time and mash two potatoes with one fork? Okay, I get it. Some might say, hey, I get what you're saying, Matteo, but that would require me to have much bigger budget. I agree with that. But although the resources involved, for producing a podcast, both in audio and video formats, will likely be a little bit bigger than if you stick, to audio only. There are several ways you could go about for keeping costs lower than expected without compromising on quality. A few ideas that I have that I would like to share are: outsource time-consuming yet critical tasks related to the production of your podcast to agencies, to freelancers who have the experience to do that for clients. Create documentation to share either internally or with third-party providers on your preferred processes to streamline even further your podcast workflows. Think strategically whether a task could be split into smaller tasks and delegate those or some of those to other colleagues or even freelancers. Collect all the design assets you would like to use in one folder, and do this right before going live. Because at the end of the day, the more work you do before launching your podcast, the lower your chances of having to deal with issues while your podcast is running, which, believe me, will demand your full attention.
I love that answer. As someone who, so our background, I think you know this, Matteo, but our background is in video, and it's something that I just say all the time, is that the amount of work that you do up front in pre-production or whatever it is that you want to call it, back when we were doing video, it was, we called them creative briefs. Now we call it our strategic action plan for podcasts. But we spend a good amount of time in that strategy piece, making sure that all of the design assets are approved and exactly what we want them to be. We build out video storyboards for the short promo videos. We build out what the full-length video kind of template is going to look like, or the frames and the lower thirds and the intro and the logo bump and all of those things. We spend a lot of time up front in doing those things, so that once we know that the strategy is in place, our customers and even ourselves can just go out and focus on making the content, and we don't need to recreate the wheel each time. And that allows us to, as on our side, as a small business, to be able to pump out, we're putting out 5 pieces of content a week or so. Some weeks we're putting out 7 pieces of content a week as a very small organization. And the only way that we're able to do that is by having very clear processes in place, design assets in place, and systems that allow us to create more quickly and efficiently.
Exactly. To all of that. Yes.
So with that, I had to give a little bit of my own flavor there, but I agree with so many things that you've said today, and I appreciate you coming on. And the last thing I want to do here is allow you to just tell people where they can find you, where they can find Kinsta, and where they can find Reverse Engineered and or your YouTube channel?
You can find, of course, more about Kinsta on kinsta.com, Kinsta with a K. And to hear more about, Reverse Engineer, our podcast, which now, has grown into season 2, you could go to kinsta.com/podcast or on our YouTube channel, of course, which is youtube.com/Kinsta, and subscribe to our podcast and our YouTube channel so you never miss, one of our piece of content.
Well, Matteo, I really appreciate it. Thanks again for coming on. It was great having you on this episode of Recorded Content.
Oh, thank you so much, Justin. It was really, really fun. Thank you really for this great opportunity.